This little device that goes in your pump is called a membrane, and it's super important. This little device that goes inside of your pump is called a membrane. And actually, this is just the housing for the casing for the membrane, and I don't know what the fancy name for it is, but this is the little membrane itself if you use this kind of pump. So I want to first show you how to put this together, and then I'm going to show you what happens if you don't have it on quite right. Because this little part is key in making sure that your pump works the way that it's supposed to. And if it's not working, or it's torn, or if it's just off a little bit, let me show you what can happen to the vacuum that your pump makes, and that's going to impact the amount of milk it's going to collect. So if all of a sudden you start producing less milk, what we often want to do is blame ourselves, but sometimes we want to make sure that the pump is working right first. So the way that this actually goes on, if you see this, there's a little triangle down here on this side. This little triangle right here fits right into the triangle like this. Perfect. And when it's on, it should cover this whole section just like that. So let's look at the vacuum for this pump when we have this membrane on just the right way. So I'm going to put this on my pump right here. And this is a Spectra pump that I'm going to use. And to test the vacuum, I'm going to use a pump gauge that I made. And if you want to know how to make the pump gauge, I have a link to that video in the comments below. You can make your own gauge at home for less than 20 bucks. Okay, so I'm going to turn this pump on and I'm going to set it at the highest setting just so we can see what happens. All right, so when it's at the highest setting and it's on correctly, it pulls to about 45, 46. So let's see what happens when it's not put on correctly. Okay. So if I take this little plastic piece and now instead of having it, we're just going to have it slightly askew here. Actually, I'm going to do it two ways. What happens if I don't put this in all the way? Okay, so I'm going to do some just kind of errors that would probably be commonly done in a household, which would be to make sure this thing isn't secure all the way. Does it matter? And I want you to know that I don't actually know the answer to this. I'm doing this experiment live, so we'll find out together. So this is a membrane that's not seated all the way. Does this make a difference? It may or may not. So it doesn't work at all. And I think this is really important that if you are pumping and you don't feel a suction or you don't feel anything happening, you need to go back and check the parts in here that are supposed to make the vacuum. Because if one of them isn't seated correctly, then it's not going to work. So let's try something else. So let's see what happens if we get a little bit of a tear in this or a hole in this. I'm going to make a teeny tiny little hole after I put this back in with a pin. So if I just take a teeny tiny hole, all right, so I've stuck one little pin. Did you see me? I just took this and just stuck one little hole in here. What does it do to the pump vacuum? The pump, what does it do to the suction if we have a teeny tiny hole in it? All right. Not much. The next thing I want to test is what happens if we get a hole in this. So I'm going to take a thumbtack, as you just saw, and I put a hole in it, and let's see what happens when we test. Whoa. All right. So actually, as I look at this, it's not much less, but it is a little bit less than 10%. It doesn't make a huge difference if that has a hole in it, which is actually surprising to me. I kind of thought it would make a big difference. What makes the biggest difference then is if it's seated just the right way. So make sure that when you're putting your pump together and you take that little piece off to wash it, make sure that you put it back so that it's aligned just the way that it's supposed to be.